Good morning. It is 10:02 a.m. on Sunday, September 9th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. It's Sunday, so I'm continuing my rewatch of The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. And today we're going to be talking about the episodes entitled The Endless Eight, parts 3 through 7. So, if you didn't watch these episodes, you might wonder why I chose to do 5 episodes in one go instead of one episode at a time, as has been the pattern. But if you did watch the episodes, then you know exactly why, and it's because they are almost identical to one another. So, The Endless Eight as a storytelling experiment is interesting, but perhaps not altogether successful. I think that the hazard, I'm plugging something. The hazard with an storytelling experiment is that it sometimes has the effect you want, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's mixed. So, obviously, I think that the Endless Eight is certainly the most controversial segment of the series for anime fans. Not controversial in the sense that any of it's offensive, but just because of these 8 episodes, 6 of them are almost identical to one another. They are different only in subtle ways. And that is not necessarily the most fun thing to watch. And especially, I can imagine, if you are watching this brand new, when you're not able to binge and just go to the next episode, and you're waiting week to week and getting one after another of the almost identical episode, I could imagine getting extremely disappointed and frustrated with that. And so, the basic plot of each of these episodes is the same. Haruhi drags the gang around on this rapid-fire succession of summer activities, desperate to get everything in before summer vacation is over. But Kyon and, to another extent, Koizumi are experiencing strong deja vu throughout, and then they conclude partway through that there is a time loop happening, and they discover that Yuki remembers all of the loops, so she can confirm what's happening. And everyone's wondering, Haruhi somehow is repeating the time. Is it because she's just not satisfied? She's not ready for summer vacation to be over? And they wonder what they can do about it. How can they snap themselves out of this time loop? And they don't figure it out, and then we repeat it again. So that's the description of the plot for episodes 2 through 7 of The Endless Eight. So, I think the negative of that is straightforward, right? It's less exciting to watch another episode when you know that the only differences are going to be subtle differences of, the characters are wearing different outfits. They say approximately the same thing, but they say it in a different way. This time he has a deja vu on this line, and this time he has a deja vu on that line. And sometimes we have these cuts where we, emphasize the deja vu differently. Sometimes when he's making a comparison about something, he uses a different reference. When Yuki is buying the masks at the Bond festivals, there's different masks to choose from. She picks a different one. She wears it a different way on her head. When those are the only differences in the episode, it's easy to understand how people could get very frustrated with that. And I don't think they're wrong to feel that way, honestly. So I think that's why when I say it's a not terribly successful experiment, that's what I mean. But I think that there are some pluses that at least partially mitigate that, and is why I describe it as interesting anyway, because one of the things that forcing us to go through all this repetition with the characters accomplishes is really making, putting us like in their place. It really makes it feel increasingly difficult and desperate. How do you get out of something like this? Especially since their memories are erased every time, and the only person who does remember every time explicitly says that she's not doing anything or saying anything about it except to confirm the answer when the others suspect it, is because Yuki, her function is just to observe. But what the repetition allows is emphasis through repetition, right? So by repeating the episodes over and over again, it draws our attention all the more to what things are different versus what things are the same, right? And through that, we can draw out certain themes and certain things that the show wants to emphasize. And I think some of that is interesting and worth thinking about, even if, it can be frustrating to watch very similar episodes over and over. So let's talk a little bit about some of what gets repeated and like what is enhanced throughout this process. And I think one of them, very significantly, is an increasing amount of empathy for Yuki Nagato, because in addition to, of the female characters, she's the one whose inner life has not been dealt with all that much, right? At the end of the, Melancholy of, the season 1 main arc, we have a moment where she talks about how, she'll protect, it's like, are there more, of these entities out there who might try to do something dangerous? And she says, don't worry, I'll protect you. Like, there's this inner element there. And just that whole bit. But we've not had a lot of her inner life. What are things like for her? But in this instance, the idea that she has been experiencing every single one of these loops, fully aware and conscious of it, it's the fact that she's not gone totally insane is probably down to her nature. But the episodes and repeating these observations draw our attention to, she does seem even more withdrawn, even more taciturn, and Kyon notices. And the idea that what must that be like for her? And it's kind of this tragic thing, is that as much as everybody else is stuck and frustrated, at least it doesn't actually feel every single time like this again. And so this idea of feeling empathy for Yuki, and one of the other ways this is expressed is the bit where she chooses to buy a mask. And we can wonder perhaps if part of what she likes about buying the mask is that, we can see that the masks are a little different every time, right? Is it possible that she's buying the mask? She buys exclusively alien and robot type masks, but is her ability to make these subtle changes with the different mask that she buys every time, is that sort of a desperate, expression of her, I don't know, what would you call it? What emotion is that? Her resignation of being stuck in this loop, but wanting things to be different. And it's an odd note, because Kyon offers every time to buy the mask for her, and she says no. And he's always a little bit like, I wish she would have let me buy that for her. And it's just an element of deepening that relationship a little bit through the repetition of drawing our attention to it each time to make us think more about it and not treat each of these little things as just a throwaway occurrence, but something that she's experiencing over and over and over and over. And just the complexity of relationships, right? The idea of how did Kyon feel when he wanted to do something nice for Yuki and she told him no, and what does he think that means Yuki feels, and all of that. And so like the repetition draws our attention to moments like that, where it would be easy to just brush completely by it as not a terribly important exchange in a regular episode. And so we think more about it because we see it over and over. And then the other element, the other conversation that I think takes on heightened meaning is the stargazing conversation with Kyon and Koizumi, where they're discussing things that they might try to break out of the loop. And one of the things that Koizumi kind of teases Kyon about is the idea of what if you told Haruhi you loved her. And of course this ties back to how he got them out of the closed space before by kissing her. But that's fraught, right? Kyon is not terribly in touch with his own emotions, frankly. And the idea of doing that feels wrong to him, like he's not comfortable with that, he's not ready for it, even though he feels jealous definitely when Koizumi kind of jokes that he might try it, although then Koizumi backs off of that saying I don't think I could pull it off. And it's actually we wonder sometimes if is Koizumi coded to be gay. I think he maybe is a little bit. The show doesn't really delve into that too much, but there's certainly lots of stuff about Kyon reacting to Koizumi's standing too close and that sort of thing. And I don't want to go too far into it because the show really doesn't deal with it other than that. But just occurred to me. But the idea, though, that that conversation is all focused as well on this idea of Haruhi subconsciously is causing time to repeat. But why? And trying to examine what would the reason be, and along with that, what would persuade her to stop. Right? So that's the key. And unfortunately, over the course of these repetitions, what we see seems to be a cycle, an accelerating cycle of, I don't want to skip it. I don't want to skip ahead. So the way Kyon continues to talk about it, and the way some of the others talk about it, the way they're phrasing it is all, she's just not satisfied. She doesn't think she had enough fun. She's not satisfied. What could we do to make her feel satisfied? It's not enough for her. It's never enough. And that's the mindset Kyon is operating with through most of this, and it seems to be what the others are more or less thinking too. And then especially as the repetitions go on, we see them weighed down increasingly. And just reacting, so especially when we get to that crucial sequence at the cafe at the end, where Kyon has this moment, this intense moment of recognizing, this feels like this is the crucial moment, and yet I don't know what to do. But in that sequence, what we see over these repetitions is everyone else increasingly non-responsive and looking exhausted and weary, and dreading the next reset because they haven't figured it out. when Haruhi is basically saying, I set aside another day. We could do something else. Anyone have any suggestions? And I think that what became clear to me rewatching all of these is that as much as Kyon is focused on this idea that Haruhi isn't satisfied, what becomes clear with repetition, just like we talked about with some of the other exchanges, what we see repeated over and over again in all of these episodes is Haruhi certainly being the leader and trying to push everyone forward to do lots of things, but also very frequently checking in with everybody to make sure they're having fun, asking them if there's anything else that they want to do, and really just kind of like trying to make sure everybody is having fun. And what we can kind of see, what I was starting to feel by the end, like getting to this point, is this sense that she's trying to have everybody have fun, and they don't seem like they're having fun by the end. Like, there's parts where they do, but it seems to me that unlike Kyon is still focused on this idea that she hasn't had enough fun for herself, and that's why she doesn't want summer vacation to end. But by the end of these sequences and this repetition, what it feels much more to me like is Haruhi is trying to make this the best summer ever for her brigade, and she feels like she hasn't done enough for them yet. Now, obviously, she has some, self-awareness issues of her own. And this ties in again to the whole central conceit, which is tricky with Haruhi, which is this idea that you know something very important about her and can't tell her. And what does that mean for your relationship with her when it is founded on this secret? And so the idea that why is she repeating it every summer? Is it because she hasn't had enough fun? Or is it because she worries that she has not made it fun enough for everyone else and subconsciously wants to try again? Anyway, we'll find out when we watch next week part 8 of the Endless 8, which concludes this whole sequence, and we'll see. How does it all get resolved? In the meantime, I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.